All right, today we're jumping into the incredible story of an ancient emperor whose legacy, believe it or not, is probably sitting in your wallet right now. It's a story about a fierce conqueror who did a total 180 and became one of history's biggest champions for peace. This is the story of Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war.
So, if you've ever had an Indian rupee note or a coin in your hand, you've definitely seen this symbol, right? The four lions, standing back to back. But have you ever really stopped and thought, hey, what are they doing there? It's one of those mysteries that's just hiding in plain sight.
And like any good mystery, the answer takes us on this amazing journey, way, way back in time. So, let's solve this puzzle of the lions on the money.
Okay, so this is where our modern world literally connects to the ancient one. These lions, they're not just some cool design. They were originally part of a huge stone sculpture called the Lion Capital that sat on top of a massive pillar, and it was put there over 2,300 years ago. By who? Emperor Ashoka. So who was this guy? Well, to get a handle on Ashoka, we first have to understand the world he was living in. He was a part of the Mauryan dynasty, the family that built the very first great empire on the Indian subcontinent. So, what's a dynasty? It's pretty simple, actually. It's when ruling becomes the family business, you know? Power gets passed down from one generation to the next. For the Mauryas, it started with Ashoka's grandfather, Chandragupta Maurya. Then came his son, Ashoka's dad, Bindusara, and then Ashoka himself. 3 generations that literally shaped an empire. And let's be really clear here. We're talking about an empire, which is a whole different beast from a kingdom. So what's the difference? It's all about scale. Empires are huge. They're way bigger, they need massive armies to protect all that land, and a whole army of officials just to collect taxes and keep the thing running. It's like a kingdom on steroids.
And the Mauryan Empire was a seriously complex and wealthy operation. The capital city was Pataliputra, but it also had these other major hubs like Taxila, the gateway to the northwest, and Ujjain, which was right in the middle of major trade routes. The whole empire was broken up into provinces, and all that land meant incredible wealth. We're talking gold, precious stones, timber, you name it.
And hey, don't just take my word for how grand this all was. There was a Greek ambassador named Megasthenes who visited the court, and he was just blown away. He wrote about the capital, Pataliputra, saying it was this massive, beautiful city with a giant wall, 570 towers, and 64 gates. This was no small town. It was a sprawling metropolis. But here's where the story takes a really sharp turn. Because Ashoka inherited all of this power, this massive empire. But one brutal, bloody war was about to change everything.
See, like a lot of emperors, Ashoka was ambitious. He looked at his already giant empire and thought, I can make it bigger. He set his sights on Kalinga, which is basically modern-day coastal Orissa, and he went to war to take it over.
And the cost of that ambition was just staggering. Over 100,000 people were killed in the battle for Kalinga. It was a victory, sure, but a victory that was built on unimaginable violence.
You know, the craziest part is, we know how horrified he was, because he told us himself. He had his regret carved right into stone for everyone to see. He wrote, "This filled me with sorrow." And that experience changed him so much that he did something that's, well, it's unheard of. He won the war and then he gave up on conquest forever. He's the only king in the entire history of the world who is known to have done that.
That war totally broke him, but in a way it also rebuilt him. Out of all that tragedy, Ashoka came up with a whole new way to rule, a new philosophy for living that he wanted to share with everyone. He called it Dhamma.
Now, you might have heard the Sanskrit word dharma. Well, Dhamma is just the version of that word in the common language people spoke back then. But Ashoka's Dhamma wasn't about religion, not really. It wasn't about worshiping certain gods or doing complex rituals. It was way simpler. It was a moral code. He had realized that winning people's hearts through teaching was way better than conquering their lands through violence.
So what did this Dhamma actually look like day to day? Well, the principles are things we'd all recognize today. Be kind to people with less power than you, respect your elders, be compassionate to all living things, be generous. And this was a huge one, respect other people's religions. He believed that criticizing someone else's faith actually winds up hurting your own.
Now, Ashoka didn't just have this great idea and then keep it to himself. No way. He basically launched one of the biggest public information campaigns of the ancient world to spread his message of Dhamma far and wide.
And his strategy was brilliant. First, he created what were basically ancient billboards, carving his messages on rocks and pillars all over the empire. Then he appointed special officials. You can think of them as Dhamma teachers, who went from place to place teaching people. He even sent messengers to other countries like Syria, Egypt, and Greece. And most importantly, he walked the walk, building roads, digging wells, and setting up medical care for both people and animals. So, to put all of this in perspective, the entire Mauryan Empire lasted for a little over a century. It was founded about 2,300 years ago and was gone by 2,200 years ago. It was this bright, intense flash in history. And Ashoka's incredible transformation? It happened right smack in the middle of it all.
Here's another really cool detail. The language Ashoka used for these messages wasn't some fancy, highbrow language that only scholars knew. He used Prakyat, the language of the common people. And the script it was written in, Brahmi, is basically the great-great-great-grandparent of most of the scripts used in India today, like for Hindi, Bengali, or Tamil. Isn't that amazing?
And this really gets to the heart of his lasting impact. Fast forward a couple of thousand years, and India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, said it perfectly. He said that Ashoka's edicts, his messages carved in stone, still speak to us today. We can understand them, and even more importantly, we can still learn from them.
And so that brings us right back to where we started, with those lions. They don't just represent an empire's power, they represent Ashoka's incredible journey, his message of peace and doing the right thing, a message born from the absolute horror of war. It's a message that still echoes today. So I'll leave you with this question. In our world, right now, which of Ashoka's messages, compassion, respect, nonviolence, do you think we need to hear the most?